So one of the many accomplishments of the men of the Great Assembly, which was that key group of rabbis who held the Jewish people together during the Babylonian exile, was to canonize the Hebrew Bible, to decide what they were going to put in it and what would not be included in the Bible. And of course, the Hebrew Bible has been closed for 2,500 years. You can't add anything to it. The Christian Bible today includes a number of books which are called Apocrypha, the Book of Ben Sira, all kinds of books that were written later in the Second Temple period, which are not included in the Hebrew Bible. They put it in their texts because the Christians wanted to have textual continuity between the end of the Hebrew Bible and the beginning of the Christian Bible. But the Jewish Bible was closed by the men of the Great Assembly 2,500 years ago. They canonized the book. And they basically used two big criteria to decide what would be in the Hebrew Bible. The first is that it has to be written by a prophet. Any prophet, from the greatest prophet Moses to Malachi, but it has to be authored by a prophet. Now we're told in the Talmud that there were hundreds of thousands of prophets from the time of Moses through the end of the First Temple period and into the Babylonian exile. But of all those prophets, we know of 48 men and 7 women by name. And the reason we know of these 48 men and 7 women by name is they're explicitly mentioned in the text of the Bible as prophets or prophetesses, meaning there was thousands and thousands of prophets who said things, but their words are not included in the text. Which brings us to the other point. The other criteria used by the men of the Great Assembly to decide what would be in the Hebrew Bible and what wouldn't would be that the message of that prophet was relevant throughout history, whether it's from thousands of years ago or until today, that message would always be relevant. And that's actually a great key for us, because when we're reading the text of the Bible, we should not just be looking at these things as stories. After all, the Bible's a guidebook. But the first question we should be asking ourselves is, when we read these texts, is if this was considered important enough by the men of the Great Assembly to be included in the text of what would be the Hebrew Bible, those 24 books, then there's a message in there for me. And we should first and foremost ask ourselves, what does this text mean to me? What am I supposed to learn from it? And by doing that, we're fulfilling basically what was the desire of the men of the Great Assembly, to create a text, the Bible, which was a guidebook that contained all the basic information that the Jewish people would need to know throughout history, from the beginning to the end, to teach the Jewish people how to think as Jews, how to direct our energies in the right direction, and how to get to the end of the story of human history as quickly and as painlessly as possible.